Steven Seagal was the immovable force of late 1980s and early 1990s. Action films, a figure so commanding that simply walking into a scene felt like a promise that justice was coming. His breakout film Under Siege turned him into a worldwide box office sensation. On screen, he wasn't just acting strong, he radiated it. Quiet, contained, and brutally efficient. He projected a kind of danger that required very few words. But behind that powerful image lay a far more complicated reality. 3 marriages that ended in heartbreak. A career that once soared to extraordinary heights, but then slipped away. And the painful awareness that the empire he had built could crumble piece by piece. And now, at 71 years old, the storms he faces are lonelier and heavier than ever. What remains when the applause has faded? What truths still weigh on him? Let's take the journey through the life behind the myth. Before the lights, the cameras, and the fame, Seagal's greatest battle was simply breathing. Stephen Frederick Seagal was born on April 10, 1952, in Lansing, Michigan. His father, Samuel, was a math teacher, and his mother, Patricia, worked as a medical technician. Money was tight, but the home was rich in love and sacrifice. Stephen, however, was a frail child. Asthma wrapped itself around his early years like an invisible chain. Nights were measured in shallow breaths and the sound of his worried mother pacing the floor, praying each one wouldn't be his last. He would sit at the window watching other kids run and play, his forehead pressed to the glass, longing for the freedom his body wouldn't allow. School wasn't kinder, the teasing cut deep, leaving invisible scars. By 1957, when Stephen was just 5, his parents made a difficult decision. Michigan's winters were suffocating him, so the family uprooted everything and moved to Fullerton, California, in search of warmth and relief. The gamble worked. For the first time, Stephen could breathe without fear. That relief planted a seed. Strength wasn't just a dream, it became his survival. That drive to become strong carried him farther than anyone could have imagined, across the Pacific Ocean. In 1974, at age 22, Stephen traveled to Japan, where the sacred dojos of Aikido remained closed worlds, rarely opening their doors to outsiders. Being an American, there wasn't an advantage. It was a burden. Respect could only be earned through pain. Day after day, he was slammed to the tatami mats, his body battered, but his spirit unbroken. Students doubted him. Masters tested him without mercy. Yet slowly, through persistence, his technique sharpened. His movements began to flow with precision, and the foreigner they once dismissed became an instructor. It was also in Japan that he met Miyako Fujitani, the daughter of a respected Aikido master in Osaka. Miyako was herself a black belt and teacher, and through her, Seagal not only found love, but also a doorway into a tradition few Westerners ever touched. Together they built a life and welcomed 2 children. For a boy who once struggled to breathe, standing as a teacher among Japanese masters felt like the greatest victory of all. But ambition is restless. By the early 1980s, Seagal felt the walls of the dojo could no longer contain him. He returned to the United States, carrying the discipline of Aikido in his bones and enormous dreams in his head. In 1983, at age 31, he opened an Aikido dojo in West Hollywood with partner Haruo Matsuoka. It wasn't glamorous. The mats were often empty, rent notices piled up, and long nights were spent sweeping the floors under buzzing fluorescent lights. Some students tried a class and left, dismissing Aikido as nothing more than a dance. To survive, he took work behind the camera, coordinating martial arts for films like The Challenge, 1982, and the James Bond film Never Say Never Again, 1983. But Seagal longed for more. He didn't want to hide behind the scenes. He wanted to show the world the art he had bled to master. In 1988, at age 36, he got his chance. His debut film Above the Law exploded onto screens. The fights weren't flashy. They were sharp, brutal, and real. Every wrist lock and throw came from lived experience. Audiences noticed. Critics noticed. And suddenly, Hollywood had a new action star. The hits came quickly. Hard to Kill, 1990, Marked for Death, 1990, and Out for Justice, 1991. He was the silent avenger, a man who didn't need to talk much because his presence filled the room. Then came the crown jewel, Under Siege, in 1992, as Casey Ryback, the ex-Navy SEAL turned ship's cook who saves the USS Missouri from terrorists. Seagal delivered a performance that blended suspense with raw ferocity. The film grossed more than $150 million worldwide, cementing him as one of the biggest stars of the era. For a brief but blazing moment, he stood shoulder to shoulder with Stallone, Schwarzenegger, and Van Damme. But by the mid-1990s, the action genre itself was shifting. In 1994, Seagal directed On Deadly Ground, a film that carried his personal passion for the environment. It was his statement piece, but audiences weren't ready. Critics savaged it, and the box office faltered. He pressed on with Under Siege 2, Dark Territory, 1995, and Executive Decision, 1996, but the momentum was slipping. Soon his movies bypassed theaters altogether, heading straight to DVD. For a man once celebrated worldwide, seeing his films stacked in bargain bins was devastating. "I've known pain since I was a boy," he admitted. "But nothing hurt like watching everything I built slip away." When Hollywood turned its back, Seagal returned to an old love, music. In 2005, he released Songs from the Crystal Cave, followed by Mojo Priest in 2006. These weren't attempts to be cool, they were sincere, a man trying to share his soul. Critics mocked him, late-night comedians sneered, but Seagal kept playing, often in small venues. For him, it was survival, not stardom. He also tried business ventures. A video game called Deadly Honor never saw release. His own energy drink fizzled out. Fragrances and martial arts collectibles came and went. The harshest blow came with real estate. A Tennessee estate once valued at $3.9 million, eventually sold for barely $500,000. For Seagal, it wasn't just financial loss. It was humiliation, watching the monuments of success fade into dust. His personal life carried equal turbulence. In 1974, he married Miyako Fujitani in Japan. They had 2 children, but when Seagal returned to the U.S., distance destroyed the marriage. "I wanted the world," he later confessed. "But in chasing it, I lost the people who mattered most." He briefly married actress Adrienne LaRussa, but the union ended almost as quickly as it began. Then came his most high-profile relationship with actress Kelly LeBrock. For a time, it looked like the fairy tale, Hollywood's tough guy, and one of its most glamorous women. They had 3 children together, and their home seemed happy. But whispers of infidelity, some rumor and some real, eroded the trust. By 1994, as his career faltered, so too did the marriage. Their divorce was public and painful. "I lost things I can never get back," Seagal admitted. In the 2000s, however, he found peace with Erdenetoye Ella Batsuk, a Mongolian-born dancer who had first worked as his translator. She saw beyond the star to the man. They married, and together they had a son, Kunsang. For Seagal, now the father of 7 children across his life, it was a second chance. A quieter chapter, a reminder that love could still be found in the aftermath of storms. But even love cannot stop the clock. The body that once made him legendary bore the scars of decades of training and stunts. Wrists, shoulders, hips, and knees all carried a tally of punishment. By his 50s, his movement slowed. The sharp snap of his throws softened into smaller, careful arcs. Directors adjusted camera angles. Stunt teams carried more weight. Fans noticed the change. Behind closed doors, the pain was constant. Heat pads before dawn, cautious steps downstairs, the quiet groan when lowering into a chair. "Every step I take now, I remember the battles that put me here," he once said. There's dignity in that, continuing, even when your body refuses to be the story people still tell about you. Now in his 70s, Seagal lives in Arizona, in a fortress-like estate with bulletproof glass, samurai statues, and an infinity pool that spills into the desert horizon. Once he owned a Tennessee mansion valued at $3.9 million, sold in the end for barely $500,000. His net worth today is estimated at about $14 million, less than his peers but enough for peace. His garage still houses reminders of his past. A 1973 Mustang with a rebellious roar, a 1987 Chevrolet Caprice, a rare Jaguar XJ220, and a Mercedes GLE. Not trophies, relics of a life once lived at full throttle, but more important than cars or property is his family. With Elle and their son Kunzang, Seagal has found a quieter rhythm. Across his life he has fathered 7 children and is now a grandfather. He meditates, practices martial arts lightly, and eats with more discipline. Evenings are more likely to be family dinners than red carpets. The mirror reflects truth, lines etched deep, speed surrendered, but present still intact. What should we take from Steven Seagal's story? Not gossip, not scandal. Something simpler and more profound. His rise was improbable. His fall was painful. His survival through music, business, family, and the humility of aging is its own kind of courage. From the frail boy in Lansing fighting for breath, to the young man in Osaka earning respect through pain, to the Hollywood star who stood with the giants, to the older man who now measures life in family moments, his story is a mirror. Glory fades. Family endures. Health is the wealth you only recognize once it's spent. The fiercest battles aren't filmed. They're fought in kitchens and living rooms among those who love us. If Steven Seagal